So you know that feeling when you walk through your front door on like an entirely, completely ordinary Wednesday?
Yeah, just a totally standard day.
Right, like you haven't run a marathon or, fought off a wild animal or anything. You just went to work, sat in a few meetings, maybe saw some friends, ran some errands. But as you drop your keys on the counter, you just realize you feel utterly, profoundly hollowed out.
Completely depleted.
Exactly. And you have absolutely no idea why. Why? Well, that mysterious Wednesday exhaustion, it isn't a personal failing. You aren't just weak or like lacking stamina. It's actually a physical signal.
Yeah, it really is.
So today we're taking a stack of research on the spaces we inhabit, our offices, our friend groups, relationships, and we're decoding how they actually alter our biology and our psychology. Our mission on this deep dive is to give you a shortcut to recognizing true belonging and to explain, the underlying mechanisms of why certain environments leave you feeling depleted while others make you feel just completely alive.
Yeah, and the premise we're unpacking today, it rests on this really radical shift in how we view the body.
Okay.
Like, our physical form holds this very specific, quiet wisdom about our environments long before our conscious minds can articulate what's actually wrong.
Wow, so the body knows first.
Exactly. The
Right.
cognitive brain is often really slow. It's busy rationalizing and, making excuses for why a situation is fine. But meanwhile, your autonomic nervous system is gathering real-time data.
Right.
And that profound exhaustion you feel by Wednesday evening, that is the final undeniable report.
Okay, let's unpack this mechanism because the text we're analyzing starts by defining what the exact opposite of that exhaustion feels like, what it calls being disarmed.
Right, establishing the baseline.
Yeah, it establishes a physiological baseline for what safety actually is. The research points out that when an environment doesn't welcome your authentic self, you feel it physically first. There's this slight involuntary contraction in the chest, or like your voice might subtly flatten out because the nervous system has basically determined you aren't around people who make it safe for you to be loud or strange or, uncertain.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is the distinction made between being defenseless and being disarmed.
Yeah.
It is so critical to understanding how we interact with space.
Right, because they sound similar, but they aren't.
Not at all. Defenselessness is vulnerability without safety. It's like standing in a hostile field without a shield.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that sounds terrifying.
It is. And neurologically, that state triggers the amygdala. Your body is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline because you're exposed to a threat without any protection.
Okay, so that's defenseless, but what about disarmed?
Being disarmed, however, is landing somewhere so consonant with who you are that the armor simply becomes irrelevant.
I love that.
Right. Your threat detection system just powers down. You don't need the shield because your brain has registered that there are no arrows.
It's kind of like it's the difference between taking off a heavy, wet winter coat when you walk into a warm, secure house versus taking it off in the middle of a blizzard.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. Like you don't feel defenseless without the coat in your living room. You just don't need it to survive the environment. You aren't worried about freezing to death on your own sofa.
Exactly.
But if you keep that heavy, wet coat on indoors, you're eventually going to just overheat and exhaust yourself just from carrying the weight of it around.
And that physical reaction, overheating in the coat or the chest contracting or the voice flattening, it's treated in this research as purely neutral information.
What do you mean by neutral?
Well, we have this tendency to pathologize every uncomfortable physical reaction as some deep-seated trauma response that needs fixing.
Oh, right. Like, what's wrong with me? Why am I anxious?
Yes, exactly. But often, the environment is simply communicating with you. Your nervous system is basically running a background scan of the room and returning a clear result. You cannot put the coat down here. The environment just cannot support your disarmament.
But when you are in a space where you can put it down, the physical markers change entirely. Like, it's the breath that drops out of the upper chest and goes all the way down to the diaphragm.
Yeah.
It's the laugh that you don't instantly try to, self-censor or modulate for the audience. And honestly, my favorite part, it's the incredible cognitive relief of starting a sentence before you know exactly where it ends.
That is so huge.
Right, because you trust the person across from you to just hold that not yet finished thought.
Yeah, offering an incomplete thought requires an environment that will not weaponize your uncertainty.
That's a powerful way to frame it. Weaponize your uncertainty?
It's true, though. When your brain knows it won't be penalized for a half-formed idea, it stops burning glucose to perfectly script every single interaction.
Which brings us right back to that ordinary Wednesday burnout. Because what happens when we aren't in those safe spaces?
Right.
The text explains that in environments that do not disarm you, you become this curated version of yourself. You're heavily edited, you're managed, you're constantly translating your natural impulses into, like, a language the room finds acceptable.
And this is where we get into the actual mechanics of the exhaustion.
Tell me more.
When you occupy a space that doesn't disarm you, you are basically running a continuous performance algorithm. And the real danger of this psychological code switching is that it becomes habituated over time.
Like it becomes second nature.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You run the algorithm so often and so seamlessly that the lines blur. You start to mistake how I am required to behave here for who I actually am.
Okay, wait, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Sure,
Just
sure.
on behalf of anyone listening who's thinking, like, isn't adapting to your environment just a basic executive function?
That's a fair question.
Because we modulate our behavior based on social proximity all the time. If I'm at a high-stakes corporate board meeting, I'm obviously going to filter myself differently than if I'm at a pub with my best friends.
Right, of course.
I wouldn't call that a destructive performance. I just call it being a functional adult in society. So why is the text framing this adaptation as so inherently damaging?
It is a really important distinction to make. The research is not criticizing situational tact or, basic politeness.
Okay.
It's focused on the depth and the chronic cost of the adaptation. We're talking about a fundamental, ongoing restructuring of your expression. It's a diffuse strain.
A diffuse strain. Got it.
Yeah. In these misaligned spaces, your language becomes permanently careful, chosen strictly for safety and palatability, not for precision or truth.
Wow.
Furthermore, your perception actually narrows. The brain is incredibly efficient, right? So it stops consciously registering observations or feelings that it knows it isn't safe to share simply because processing those thoughts is a waste of energy.
That is wild. So it's not a sudden catastrophic depletion. It's basically death by 1,000 microscopic moments of self-editing.
Precisely. And we have to remember that cognitive energy is finite. If 40% of your brain's processing power is running a background program called Survive This Room.
Just tracking tone, reading subtle shifts in body language.
Exactly. Anticipating reactions to ensure you remain acceptable. If you're doing all that, your full capacity is severely restricted.
That makes total sense.
You simply cannot bring your deeper genius, your creativity, or your full presence to a space when your system is preemptively managing potential social threats.
So what does this all mean? Like, this constant management is so neurologically draining and it restricts our capacity that significantly. Why do we stay in these places?
It's a great question.
I mean, I'm thinking about the listener who has been at that same draining corporate job for a decade, or who stays in a long-term social circle where they perpetually feel like they're walking on eggshells. Why not just leave?
Well, we stay because the social architecture surrounding us is designed to keep us there. We are actively conditioned not to leave.
Right. Quitting is bad.
Exactly. Commitment is universally, culturally coded as virtuous. Loyalty, regardless of the toll it takes on you, is praiseworthy. We're taught from a very early age that interpersonal or environmental difficulty just means you need to try harder or, be more resilient or develop a thicker skin.
That structural narrative is incredibly insidious. It effectively gaslights people into accepting their own quiet erosion.
It really does.
Like, if you feel deeply uncomfortable in a mismatched environment, the culture reframes that discomfort as a personal failing. You're told you're being too sensitive, or you aren't being a team player, or your expectations of comfort are just unrealistic.
And we also have to look at the systemic benefits of that narrative. Institutions, hierarchical relationships, and the broader economy depend heavily on people staying in configurations that do not allow them to fully open.
Sure, because it's easier to manage.
Exactly. Massive systems require predictable, manageable people to function smoothly. If everyone suddenly left every space that required them to run that exhausting curation algorithm, those systems would face catastrophic friction.
They just collapse.
Right. The institutional cost of your authentic self is unpredictability. But the personal cost to you, however, is a slow erosion that literally wears your personality down into a smaller, more easily contained shape.
Ugh, that's a bleak image. But we should clarify something vital here, so the listener doesn't walk away with the impression that they should only inhabit, like, bubble-wrapped worlds where nothing ever challenges them.
Oh, absolutely not.
Because not all difficulty is bad. The core principle isn't about avoiding hardship entirely, right? It's about not making your home in places that require you to be less than what you are.
Right. The research explicitly acknowledges that expansive spaces are rarely effortless. True intimacy involves profound risk. Deep learning requires the intense, highly vulnerable discomfort of not knowing something. Growth necessitates friction.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yep.
The distinction that shifts this entire paradigm is the direction of the discomfort. Like, good spaces challenge you, but the challenge opens you. It expands your capacity. Bad spaces challenge you, but they contract you. They leave you smaller, more exhausted, and just more defended.
That's a perfect summary.
It's kind of like the difference between the physical soreness of a heavy deadlift versus the pain of wearing shoes that are a size too small.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Thanks. Like, the deadlift creates micro tears in your muscle fibers, which is painful, obviously, but the friction rebuilds you stronger.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the danger of wearing the tight shoe isn't just the acute pain of walking in it.
What is it?
The real danger is that over time, the bones in your foot will actually reshape and deform themselves to fit that restricted space.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's horrifying.
It is, and that is precisely what happens to your psyche in a contracting environment.
Yeah.
Neuroplasticity works in both directions. Your brain will literally rewire itself to become smaller and more defended if that is what the environment demands for survival.
Which goes back to the body knowing first.
Exactly. The body recognizes this difference between expansion and contraction through somatic markers, long before the conscious mind has the vocabulary to rationalize it.
Right.
So the challenge is critically evaluating the friction in your own life.
Yeah.
Is this project or this relationship or this workplace demanding that you deadlift, or is it demanding that you bind your feet?
Man, that's such a good question. And to find those expansive spaces, the text suggests we have to seek out something completely counterintuitive. It argues we need to look for spaces that disable us, which is so weird because in our modern hyper-productivity-obsessed culture, being disabled or unoptimized are basically considered failures.
Oh, completely.
We want all our gears turning smoothly. We want to be endlessly strategic and polished. So why is being disabled a good thing here?
Well, the framework redefines this concept entirely. In this context, being disabled means your usual social strategies, your defensive wit, and your protective gear are rendered completely unnecessary and often ineffective.
Okay, so you literally can't use them.
Right. You cannot perform your way into connection in these environments because the room flat out refuses to receive or validate a performance.
Wow. It just strips the gear away.
Exactly.
When the room doesn't respond to the curated representative you usually send in to handle social interactions, what remains is the actual you.
Yes.
Like the unoptimized, unstrategized, messy reality of who you are. And the paradox the text presents is that this unmanaged version of you is actually your most potent state. It's the only version of you capable of real resonance.
And we should note, these disarming spaces are highly demanding.
Right. It's not like you just get to lounge around.
No, not at all. They aren't passive zones where you do nothing. They actually require significantly more of you than a contracting space does.
Yeah.
But what they require is reality.
Actual reality.
Yeah, they demand actual, unvarnished thoughts and raw feelings. They ask for the full presence of the person rather than the heavily managed, predictable representative.
Which brings us to how we actually measure this in real time. Because the text offers this really practical diagnostic framework, 5 physiological and psychological markers to basically audit the spaces in our lives. And rather than a checklist, it's more of a progression of how the body reacts. It starts with the vocal cords.
Right, the first marker. You need to pay close attention to what happens to your pitch and cadence when you enter a room.
Like how your voice literally sounds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Does your voice drop, deepen, and find a natural resonance? Or does it tighten, rise slightly in pitch, and become more clipped and careful?
I definitely notice my voice getting higher when I'm nervous.
We all do it.
Yeah.
That physiological shift in the vocal cords is an autonomic response, dictating whether you feel the immediate need to placate the people around you.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And that vocal tension feeds directly into the second marker, which is perception.
Right.
If your voice is tight, your brain is likely entering threat assessment mode. You aren't actually absorbing the room, you are scanning it.
Yes, looking for danger.
Exactly. You're reading microexpressions and monitoring the social hierarchy just to ensure you're safe, rather than being fully present and available to the experience.
And once your perception narrows to threat assessment, it creates the third marker, which is the gap.
The gap between what you think and what you say.
Right. It's the cognitive distance between what you intrinsically think and what you actually allow yourself to verbalize. And the larger the gap, the more mental energy you are expending to bridge it.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. You have to evaluate the weight of what lives in that space. Ask yourself, how much of your true perspective are you actively withholding or heavily sanitizing just to speak safely in that environment?
The cognitive weight of living in that gap is just staggering. Which makes the fourth marker, the aftermath, inevitable.
Oh, the aftermath is so telling.
Right. When you finally leave that interaction and walk through your front door, you have to measure the residue. Do you feel more solidified in yourself, or do you feel like you just successfully completed an appearance, like a politician navigating a hostile press conference?
That's a great way to put it. And the ultimate, most immediate indicator tying all of this together is the fifth marker,
Yep.
the breath.
The breath.
Yeah, the body runs this measurement constantly. You have to ask, is your breathing shallow, managed, and trapped entirely in the upper chest? Or does the environment allow the breath to drop fully down into the diaphragm?
And these aren't abstract concepts, they're tangible biological metrics.
Exactly. The only work required of you is to stop overriding them and choose to actually listen.
Because when you finally stop overriding those metrics, when you look at the tight voice, the massive gap between your thoughts and words, the shallow breath, it forces this brutal but necessary realization.
It really does.
You have to face the fundamental difference between fitting in and belonging. Fitting in is an acquired skill. It's an adaptation to a context. If you are highly observant and willing to suppress enough of your own edges, you can learn the required code and fit in almost anywhere.
But belonging, conversely, is not an achievement.
What is it then?
It is a discovery.
Wow.
It is walking into an environment that is already structurally organized around the reality of who you actually are. The realization is immediate. You just think, oh, these are my people. This space does not require my translation.
Oh, man. The relief in understanding that distinction is just immense. If you are listening right now and you've spent years brilliantly fitting in to a corporate culture or a specific social group, but you still feel unseen and chronically exhausted,
Yeah.
it is not because you failed the performance. It's because you succeeded at it perfectly and you mistook that successful performance for actual belonging.
And this raises an important question because recognizing that illusion often requires leaving the room you are currently in.
Which is terrifying for most people.
It is. But the research is uncompromising on this point. Leaving a space that refuses to disarm you is not an act of abandonment. It is not a failure of resilience or a display of selfishness.
Right.
It is the arrival of clarity. Your presence, your time, and your energy are finite resources. Offering a space, a heavily managed, curated facsimile of yourself, is not a genuine gift to that space anyway.
That's so true.
The only true gift you have to offer is the full person. And the full person can only emerge when the nervous system registers safety.
Wow. Okay, let's pull all of this together and summarize the journey we've mapped out today.
Sounds good.
We started by validating that mysterious Wednesday exhaustion, recognizing it not as a weakness, but as the body's brilliant, quiet information system signaling a lack of safety. Then we explored the immense cognitive load of playing a curated character just to survive a room and how institutions actually rely on that predictable performance.
Right.
We broke down the vital difference between the bad friction that deforms you to fit a small space and the good friction that challenges you to expand.
The deadlifts versus the tight shoes.
Exactly. And ultimately, we looked at the courage required to stop settling for the exhausting skill of fitting in so you can pursue the unoptimized discovery of true belonging.
It is a profoundly challenging framework for evaluating the external spaces in our lives, the offices, the institutions, the relationships.
Definitely.
But the most crucial application of this research might actually be internal.
Oh, interesting. Where are you going with this?
Well, we've spent this entire discussion analyzing external environments. But the question you must ask yourself now is about the space inside your own head.
Oh, wow.
Right? Is your internal monologue an environment that disarms you? Or have you, over years of habituation and social conditioning, built an internal architecture that constantly requires you to perform, manage, and ruthlessly edit your own authentic thoughts before you even grant yourself the permission to fully feel them?
Oh, man. Are we wearing the wet, heavy winter coat inside our own minds?
Exactly.
That is a heavy, necessary question to carry with us. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. As you move through the rest of your day, pay attention to that somatic data.
Please do.
Check the tension in your shoulders, listen to the pitch of your voice, and take a breath that drops all the way down to your diaphragm. Hopefully, when you walk through your front door next Wednesday, you won't feel hollowed out by the performance at all. You'll just feel like you're finally home.